Flashback. It's the early 70s. Shows like Spectreman and Return of Ultraman have ushered in a second kaiju boom. Among the companies trying to make their own Ultraman-likes is Toho, best known around these parts for the Godzilla series. Airing on a kids' variety show starting in October of 1972, Toho's first attempt at what's known as a Kyodai Hero series was Go Godman. And when that concluded, they followed it up with Go Greenman the next year. Oh, hi Les. Normally I'd make two separate videos, but there isn't that much of a difference between either show, so I'm just gonna cover them in one. They're both about giant ultra-hero-inspired characters who rescue younglings when they're terrorized by rotting monster suits. Godman is a warrior from space. He comes from the planet Fire God, where he presumably resides when he's not defending the Earth. This isn't explained in the show, for the record. As per usual when there's deep lore about some giant superhero show, it's explained in some book that was only released in Japan. Anyways, Godman. He's basically Ultraman with a wig. He makes use of projectile attacks like his gun hands, in addition to swinging around his unique signature move, a blue flail called the God Crush. He doesn't seem to have a time limit, boy would it be nice if he did have one, but he's only able to maintain his giant form with a bracelet, and he doesn't have a human form like most Ultramen. He persists purely as a giant superhero living on a steady diet of monster slapping. Greenman, unlike his biological space warrior predecessor, is an android. A self-proclaimed envoy of God, he uses ear boomerangs, the Green Man's stick, and for his finishing blow, he has the Bresta. While Godman over here is a little more derivative of Ultraman, the hair and the giant shades are a fun detail, but still. Greenman, on the other hand, is a wholly unique look. Very weird, very different. I like it. But yeah, outside of the aesthetics of the heroes, the shows are similar enough to discuss in one video, which also invites comparisons. While Godman seems to help just about anyone of any age, Greenman specifically protects children because of his show's premise. See, Godman doesn't have a story. It takes place in this perpetual nightmare where he tangles with monsters in slow motion. They do kind of attempt a plot sometimes, only in specific arcs. But Greenman actually has a villain who lasts the entire show. Being an envoy of God, Greenman's greatest enemy is a lumpy creature named Mao, aka Satan. If you think about it, it's basically a sequel to the Book of Revelations. Satan fell from heaven, he gets banished underground, and now he requires the blood of the innocent to escape. Yeah, that's the reading we're going with here. Using the Green Call, the kids are able to summon Greenman to fight Mao and his servant Tonchiki for 156 episodes. If that sounds crazy, don't worry, they're all 3 minutes long. This eventually leads to a final showdown against Mao, so Greenman has an actual ending to look forward to, unlike Godman, which just kinda peters out. It's not terribly complicated, but there are more wrinkles to it. There's a tangible through line in the form of the main villain, and a little more context for each scenario. It's because of that I think Greenman is the better of the two shows. It's also way more entertaining, but I'll get to that. Perhaps a testament to their obscurity, there isn't that much known about the production of these shows, at least not on the English-speaking web. We do know that Greenman was designed by veteran kaiju suit maker Keizo Murase's older brother. Teizo Toshimitsu was the head of the modeling departments, and there are 3 known directors across both shows, but they're otherwise pretty mysterious productions. Doesn't help that a lot of potentially helpful information remains untranslated. Yet another thing that's worth mentioning, both shows aren't completely subtitled. Fan subs do exist, but they don't cover the entirety of both. That said, you really don't need to know the finer details of Godman in particular. That one's pretty English-friendly. With Greenman, you're missing specifics like Mao being banished by God, but it's also very watchable. God and Green make use of a format less inspired by the big expensive productions like Ultraman. Obviously the superhero and monster of the week element is very Ultraman, but it's instead more influenced by Tsuburaya's quick and dirty productions, Ultra Fight and Red Man. which featured heroes and kaiju from Subaraya's backrooms doing unchoreographed wrestling in the muddiest locations they could find. Also, compared to Redman, these shows actually have a slight edge in regards to production values. Sometimes they're fighting at normal size, and sometimes they're towering over buildings. I don't know, it's something. Probably the most infamous factoid regarding both is that they feature kaiju from Toho's monster movies. It's probably why you've heard of these shows. We've got Sanda and Gyra from War of the Gargantuas, Kamibas from Space Amoeba, Gabra from Godzilla's Revenge, Gorosaurus from King Kong Escapes, a gorilla literally named Gorilla that uses the Kong suit from that same movie. There's the Bat from Latitude Zero. Basically, everyone who still has a usable suit is here. They also bring in monster suits from another tokusatsu series called Assault Human. I don't want to get too distracted here. It's basically about this Ultraman-type hero and his friends fighting a bunch of monsters. But the gist of it is that it was a stage show that was then broadcast to television. Beyond that, there isn't much I can say about it because it's apparently lost media. So outside of this grainy 8mm footage, there's no way to actually watch the whole show. It's a shame, but at least their suits lived on here. Some of the monsters who appear in Godman that I thought were from Godman didn't even originate from it. They instead appeared in a game show called Chibico Special, basically a kids game show. Godzilla himself made an appearance on it. Speaking of Godzilla, his washed-up son Manila shows up in Greenman. But yeah, here we get a juxtaposition of monsters made for movie tokusatsu, with ones thrown together for a micro-budget television series. The television suits are definitely goofy looking and in some cases barely a suit, but they're also in better shape than the ones made for the movies. I won't rule out that they were using stage suits. I mean, it seems entirely possible that they weren't using the ones from the actual movies. But regardless, they look really bad. Like, my god, poor Gorosaurus. His arms are sagging and whatever color he once had has disappeared. Same for Gabra over here. Sanda and Gyra's rot was evidently so bad that they had to be given facelifts, slightly tweaking the design in the process. Once we leave familiar territory, the original kaiju of God and Green get pretty abstract. Oh shit, is that Dedismon? Let's talk about Godman on its own. Yeah, if you couldn't tell from the footage, this isn't the most substantive show I've covered. It's important to remember with something like Godman that it was made in the context of being something that played on a variety show alongside other short-form content. The program's host, Asato Tetsuya, even appears in a couple segments. Incidentally, his episodes have the most dialogue in the entire show. It was also made for a very, very young audience. That's why it's so rock simple. Toho's own Zone Fighter would have been airing as Godman was halfway through its 156-segment run, which is clearly the more elaborate project and has visibly higher standards. Godman is not meant to be scrutinized like one of its more expensive siblings. It would be an unfair comparison. But, okay, let's not give it a free pass. I enjoyed large chunks of its follow-up, Greenman, way more, despite that more or less being the same thing. So even in the niche subgenre of micro-budget Kyodai hero shows, Godman is still one of the worst I've seen. There are a lot of issues with it. It's got repetitive choreography, a catchy yet endlessly looping theme song, farting, and non-existent editing. The shot is still going. Might have to blur the footage to make sure Toho doesn't claim the video, maybe even flip it, but yeah, trust me, the shot's still going. I'll put it in the corner there, see how long it takes to end. All of the fights are shot in slow-mo, so unless you have a building for reference, every fight in this show looks the same. That's 100% a budget thing. Can't have a building or two all the time. Godzilla needs them next week. But when every fight scene takes forever and nothing interesting is even happening in terms of choreography or special effects, it gets old quick. Oh hey, the shot finally ended. For as much groaning I've done, there's undoubtedly a charm to shows like this. Something primal about tokusatsu being stripped to its barest elements. Just guys in suits wrestling in quarries and dirt roads. It's cheap yet endearing. I'd rather live in a world where shows like this do exist than one where they don't. But, God, Godman is just so monotonous. The sloppy fights would be funny if this wasn't the entire show. The lack of plot really doesn't help. Savor the moments where they reveal the monster has a fun special ability and they use some funky little special effect for it, because right afterwards they go back to the fisticuffs. Sometimes you get something wacky like a monster that uses an umbrella. That's great, fantastic, amazing. Moments like this are a goddamn oasis in this desert of a show. There's a part where Godman karate chops a police officer back to life. My favorite fight doesn't even have an elaborate monster. It's just two guys in cheap skeleton masks. This is the kind of weird shit I live for. More of this, please. In isolated 3-minute chunks, the way it was intended to be viewed back in 1972 and 73, it can be good schlocky fun. But put yourself in my shoes, someone who had to watch hours of this for a YouTube video. I mean, yeah, I did this to myself. I do like to be thorough in my assessments, and if I missed a particular moment, I wouldn't hear the end of it. And sure, I did end up putting it at 1.5 times speed, but you can see why I wouldn't be very enthusiastic about this show if I had to resort to doing that, right? If Redman and its nightmarish landscapes and scary music represent tokusatsu hell, then Godman's lethargic choreography and very few creative scenarios represent tokusatsu purgatory. Very little interesting happens here. I would not recommend watching the entire show. Now, Greenman, that's also pretty ramshackle as a production, but I think it's almost a night and day comparison. I say almost because, don't get it twisted, it shares a lot of the same problems. The structure leads to a lot of the same monotony, but every aspect of it is ever so slightly better. The pacing and editing are tighter, so you get action scenes with more movement. The camera snap zooms in and out. The choreography, monster abilities, and use of the environment lend these fights more creativity, which is what you want when your show is 10% plot and 90% action. Tonchiki and Mao are delightfully silly villains once you get past the whole blood thing. By God, it seems like the showrunners had fun here. There's even more than 3 songs on the soundtrack. Now there's like 5. While I did say Greenman has more going on, every episode still reads the same, so it's still not all that compelling. Here's what always happens. Mao plots a kidnapping, he sends a monster after them, they call Greenman, insert fight scene, Greenman is in trouble, the boys save him, he wins. Mao then takes his anger out on Tonchiki. This is a show aimed at young audiences, so I can't give it too much grief for being so simple. Ultraman shows are formulaic like that too, and this has even less opportunities to do something different because of the limited budget. I just find it funny that the villains stand literally no chance, and that they try the same thing almost every time. It's just kinda funny. The odds are stacked heavily against Mao. It'd be almost unfair if he wasn't a bloodthirsty hellspawn. All it takes is the green call falling out of some kid's pocket and Greenman comes running. They press it again at any point and he gets stronger as well. Basically a screw you, I win device. Even without subs, I can tell Mao is getting angrier and angrier that nothing seems to be working. These guys were never meant to take over the Earth, they're just too silly. Can't express enough how much I enjoy them. Green shares a lot of the same monsters as the last show, though now they're all being sent in by Mao. They get pretty weird too. There's a quilt monster, a dry ramen bird thing. Even the red guy from Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared shows up. This roster is stuffed with more weirdos since each arc is only 3 episodes as opposed to the standard of 6 of the last show. Yeah, there's a reason why those fights got really boring. There are comparably less movie monsters in this series. Camebus and Gorosaurus sit this one out. But we do get that strange addition of Manila. He's got evil pointy fangs now, and he's sucking on a pacifier. And he has to drink from a milk bottle to power up. They really play up the whole baby thing here, which makes his fate all the more strange. Tonchiki and Mao kill him. Poof, he's gone. I know some of you might not like Minya. I think he's a bit of an ugly bastard myself. But I've never really hated him, and I think this is too much. Greenman's laughing too. What an asshole. Gabber is pretty awful here too. He absorbs kids into his stomach. That's just gross, dude. There isn't much left to say. This show can be fun for what it is. Very much not built for binging, but it's creative in how it uses its locations, has some memorable fights stemming from imaginative set pieces. It's got some really out-of-pocket moments. What the hell? Otherwise, it's unabashedly silly and charming. I still wouldn't recommend watching the entire show. You can get the entire gist of it pretty quickly, and it's not going to hold your attention for very long. It's something you leave on in the background while doing something else. Me, personally, I played through the entirety of Pokerogue. Fully expecting that to get taken down by the time this video goes up, by the way. Nintendo would never let something this cool stay up for long. But yeah, Greenman. That's the one I think you should watch if you ever have to watch either of these.
Greenman, I knew you couldn't resist.
And so, Godman and Greenman had finished airing. They were followed up by a new show, Go Kotaro Ushiwaka, which followed a ninja and a bunch of yokai. So that's outside of the interests of Ultra Gaiden. Aside from that, there's one more thing I have to talk about. 34 years after the end of Greenman, a 2008 DVD release of the original Godman contained a short film directed by Masaki Tezuka. What else has that guy done? Oh, it's a little movie. You might have heard of it. It's called Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla. Set in a small town, a photographer and a random worker get caught in the middle of Godman's battle against the monster Sunozilla, who looks amazing here now that he's escaped the Showa era. After destroying it, the body separates and turns into— holy shit, it's Gaira! He's gotten over his meth addiction. I am so happy for him. This next bit is treated like a surprise, but you're watching a Godman and Greenman video. But take a wild guess who shows up to help. I love this. I love this a lot. It's the kind of tribute that shows respect and appreciation for the source material, and it's all the more endearing for it. Even as someone who doesn't care for Godman all that much, this is so cool it made me care. It's got a bit of that modern Kamen Rider influence with its flashier human-scale choreography, though it still pays tribute to the awkward slow motion from the original. Much more charming here knowing it's a tribute, and also not attached to something that went on for 8 hours. There's something thematically in there about demolishing old places, and the places people grew up in becoming unrecognizable. The dialogue is super cheesy, but it's a fine enough backdrop. The photographers rekindling with their old toys is what ultimately summons Greenman, who saves the day. It's pretty hype. Before I forget, I noticed a brief War of the Gargantua's Electro remix. Nice touch. I pointed. I clapped. It's just a really fun tribute to Godman. And Greenman to a much lesser extent. Yeah, he kinda got the short end of the Greenman stick here, but it's still really cool. Without hyperbole, it's the best thing either character has ever appeared in. With Godman being the first time Toho attempted a fully fledged tokusatsu television series, it's probably worth mentioning the other Kyodai hero things they did. The ones directly relating to Ultraman, at least. Their actual big and expensive entry into Kyodai heroism aired the same year as Greenman, entitled Zone Fighter. Godzilla is also there. I made a video about it. Check it out. Later in the 70s, their final attempt at a copy of the Ultra series was Megaloman, who's rocking even crazier hair than Godman, I mean. This one is also pretty obscure, but I might cover it if it ever gets English subs. Proper English subs, not machine-translated ones. You know who you are. Hi, Editing Golden here. I just wanted to say that this theme song kicks so much ass. Hi, even further in the future, Editing Golden here. This show has an Italian dub, and its theme song is hilarious. But what about God and Green? Have they appeared in anything outside of the 2008 special? Well, ever heard of Lucky Star? Haha, I get that reference. Godman also got referenced by Godziban. They love their deep cuts. Well, what about Greenman? Well, aside from the usual merch releases, he's been missing in action since 2008. Sorry, man. So, if you wanted to, how do you watch these shows? Well, let's just say there are methods that don't involve YouTube. Like buying the official DVD releases that were only released in Region 2. Yeah, that's the only way to watch it. Much like Zone Fighter and Megaloman, it's highly unlikely that they'll ever be acknowledged by Toho in any meaningful way. They will continue to be referenced in things and not actually appear proper, like in a reboot or something. But I think that's okay. They had their time. The 2008 special is probably the best thing they will ever be in, so I'm fine with God and Green comfortably living in the past. They're both charmingly retro. Don't think I'd ever watch them again, but I want to remember them for the on-the-fly choreography and the scrappy nature of the productions more than the experience of actually watching them. It'd be neat if they got official English releases, but they should probably wait at the back of the line, behind more deserving shows. In summation, they sure existed, and I'm kind of glad that they existed. Just watch pieces of Greenman on YouTube. You'll probably be satisfied. Here's a shout out to the top patrons who get videos like this one a little bit earlier. Kadorian, Scooter Jit, Mago Muddy, Chris Space Cowboy, Lobotomy Blues, Cool Bell Zero, Pack Jeff, Johnny Hedgewolf, Eric Guzda, Janos Firewalker, Easterman, Macho Mantis, Manila Fan. I'm sure they're really upset about what happened to him here. Sampai, Big Dumb Media, Navik 15, Jacob Hinch, Dude Bro, Alastair Gilmore, Seamus Kelly, Anonymous Euronymous 1349, Fujoshi Urinal, Grazio, Mulan Nguyen, Irrelevant 402, Krazak 53, Queer Kaiju, Chronicler Waba, Alcoholic Alligators, Ryan Santa Cruz, Avok Robot, The Antagonist, Godzilla Rich, It's God Z, An Actual Dimetrodon, CMG, Red Comet Harry, and Marpzilla. I always do that inflection, I gotta get out of it. Anyways, thanks for being patrons.